When thinking about genocide, one's mind would likely go to the genocide against the Tutsi that occurred in Rwanda in 1994, or more famously, the Nazi Holocaust that was responsible for the deaths of around 6 million European Jews during World War II. One of the lesser-known genocides, taking place mere decades before the Nazi Holocaust, was the Armenian Genocide. This genocide is disputed by the Turks to this day, but historians considered it to be a genocide where around 1.5 million Armenians were killed by the government of the Ottoman Empire. Raphael Lemkin, the man who authored the word genocide, was initially interested in accounts of the massacres of Armenians and the attempt to eliminate an entire group of people. He did not apply the word until 1943 to Nazi Germany and the killing of Jews in a book published a year later, Axis Rule in Occupied Europe. Before World War I, there were 2 million Armenians in the Ottoman Empire, but by 1922, there were less than 400,000.
In my school, in our neighborhoods, in many places where I go, there are so many people that don't know about the Armenian Genocide. They know about the Holocaust, what happened to the Jews, but they don't know about the Armenian Genocide, which was the first genocide of the 20th century.
Batmam.
Yayın hikayen gırnası.
Mamam kızlığında, gençliğinde, çocukluğunda çok çekmiş. Kendisi daha doğmadan mamasının karnındayken bir gece kapı vuruluyor tak 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 köyde. Açıyorlar, bakıyorlar ki 3 tane silahlı jandarma Vostigan, Artina burada mısın gör? Artina nerede? Baban Gançer'in.
Yayın baban.
Yayın baba, babasını. Artina. Alıyorlar, götürüyorlar, bir daha geri gelmiyorlar. Kesiyorlar. Kafasını kesiyorlar, yok ediyorlar. Böyle binlerce eve giriyorlar, binlerce. Bütün evlerdeki Ermenileri, erkekleri kesiyorlar, götürüyorlar.
Turks believe that the supposed genocide was the result of a war that led to the end of the Ottoman Empire and claim that there was no premeditation to the deaths, so it cannot be labeled a genocide. In Turkey, it was a crime for decades to insult Turkishness by bringing up the issue of what happened.
What's interesting is I still have trouble talking to Turks about Armenia, but there is a little more openness if they're from the Kurdish region, and they'll say, yes, it was a genocide. But if you confront people here in the United States that are Turkish, they will still have an issue for it.
Turkey for Turks was a phrase used by the Young Turks, a radical nationalist group of military officers, young students, and other dissatisfied Turks to signify the taking back of Turkey. This group eventually took power in the Ottoman Empire in 1908 and even sided with Germany in 1914 during World War I, but were quickly defeated in an attempt to fight the Russians. Armenians in the area were blamed by the Young Turks and said to have sided with the Russians, setting the stage for the genocide soon to come. Prior to the genocide, the Armenians, many of them merchants and industrialists, were mostly concentrated in eastern Anatolia. They were noticeably better off than the Turks of the Ottoman Empire, which contributed to the descent toward Armenians. 1915 did not mark the first instance of genocide against the Armenians, as a similar instance took place between 1894 and 1896 with the Hamidian massacres. The Armenian Genocide took place between 1915 and 1923 and was a systematic and calculated extermination of the Armenians in the Ottoman Empire. The Armenians were a religious minority, as they were a Christian nation, unlike the Ottoman ruler, which existed under Muslim rule. The Turks came to resent the Armenians, who succeeded under Ottoman rule, and felt that they would remain more loyal to Christian governments like that of Russia rather than the Ottoman Caliphate.
The Armenians are Orthodox Christian, and so they're different from Turks who are Muslims. And this goes back a long time historically, back to like the 14th century, when the Christians were seen as the ones that were in power of the Turks, and it was almost like a revenge. So it was used and motivated in terms of Turks to say, look, these people are no good. They will kind of subordinate us and use the religion, the Orthodox Christian religion, against them. So definitely religion becomes a big motivator in all genocide.
All the victims of the Armenian Genocide, all the martyrs, they were killed. They were martyred because of their faith, because of their Christian faith, because of being Christian Armenians, not only for being Armenians, but because of being Armenian Christians. And they were called infidels, they were called different names, but they perished because of their faith and because of their religion.
The acts committed against the Armenians during the genocide were incredibly inhumane and extreme, like death marches through the Mesopotamian desert. Armenians were forced out of their homes without food or water, and sometimes they would be stripped naked and forced to walk until they died of exhaustion, or were shot if they stopped to rest. Other horrific instances often carried out by killing squads, which are said to have included murderers and other ex-convicts, including mass burnings, crucifixions, and drownings at sea.
Because there was such a hate spread about the Armenians and about the Christian Armenians, that all the people who were involved in the massacres, and the Turks usually chose criminals, Kurds, other nations, to do that on their behalf. And there was hatred spread among the people and among the nations too. And they were not treating Armenians and the people as people. They were approaching them as animals, and that's why you see all the brutality, killings, and because they were not treating them as people. There are so many stories that the commanders of the battalion, they would order not to shoot to the people, but use their knives or machetes or kill any other way, because they didn't want to spend even gunpowder to kill the Armenians.
Genocide in general is very severe, very disheartening to say. If you study genocide, and specifically the Armenian, you see that people get carried away and they're in a hurry to actually extinguish that race. So that was part of the plan at that time. If you look at Rwanda, that was part of the plan. And people who were perpetrators during a lot of these different genocides are people who will say to you that have been interviewed that we got caught. We didn't know how to stop ourselves. So the lesson, if you can learn one, is that we're all capable of it at some point, and that's the scariest part about learning about genocide.
George Horton, U.S. Consul General at Smyrna during the genocide, details some of the brutality that occurred in the city in his book, The Blight of Asia. Looking from the door of the consulate, I saw a number of miserable refugees with their children, bundles and sick, being herded toward the quay by several Turkish soldiers. One gray-haired woman was stumbling along behind, so weak that she could not keep up, and a Turkish soldier was prodding her in the back with the butt of his musket. At last, he struck her such a violent blow between the shoulder blades that she fell sprawling upon her face on the stony street. Another woman came screaming to me, crazy with grief, crying, "My boy, my boy." The front of her dress was covered with blood. She did not say what happened to her boy, but the copious blood told its own story.
There are so many stories that the commanders of the battalion, they would order not to shoot to the people, but use their knives or machetes or kill any other way, because they didn't want to spend even gunpowder to kill the Armenians. So I don't know. With that, you just see the hatred that was spread around in the whole nation, in the whole country, between the Armenians and Turks and all the people who were part of that, all those massacres too.
In the city of Smyrna itself, the hunting and killing of Armenian men, either by hacking or clubbing or driving out in squads into the country and shooting, caused an unimaginable panic. There was no help anywhere in sight. The battleships of the great powers, including America, could not interfere for various reasons, and there were instances of persons who had reached them being sent back to the shore. This manhunt was now being participated in by squads of the Turkish army. Armenians soon disappeared from the streets, either through death or concealment. The proclamation had been issued that anyone concealing an Armenian in his house would be brought before the court-martial and justly dreaded tribunal. One instance will show what terror this edict inspired in the hearts of all, even foreign subjects. Children were taken by government forces and given to Turkish families to be converted to Islam. Women were also raped and forced to wed Turkish men and join harems or serve as slaves.
Genocide for the first 50 years, the Armenians were kind of afraid to talk about the genocide. So it was because it was a totally new stage for the Armenians. So the generation that flew to Syria, Lebanon, Greece, or United States, they were not openly speaking about the Armenian genocide or what happened to them and their families. Because they were scared about the situation. They were scared that the Turks will come after them. They will find their place. They will find their house, and there was they were afraid of the situation. They were afraid of the Turks happening that again.
Բզդիգերն է Armenian Genocide-in մասին վրան գրնայր հոսել, այո ya da ոչ։
Չէ, ոչ,
Ինչու։
vah ունենք, Թուրքերեն,
Ինչ պիտենեին թուրքերենը, որը դվասիկա 100 տարի առաջ եղավ։
100 տարի առաջ մեզի չեն ցկել ki խոսինք, կպարգանային, մի խոսիկ կսեին։
It was just my grandmother and her mom, and they ended up in the Near East orphanages, which was a very difficult time for her until they gradually made their way here to America. So she never spoke about it, and I think in her life I could honestly say that I never really saw her happy, as a, with that true sense of happiness. I believe she bore the scars of genocide, the wounds of genocide in her heart, and never really shared them with anyone.
Türkiye'nin gısegor ki Armenian Genocide'ı hiç çehav. Asmasin hamar sen ne diyorsun?
Ya, yalan konuşuyorlar, eşek gibi biliyorlar, çünkü okey yaptık deseler dünyanın parasını vermeleri lazım Ermenistan'a, Ermeni halkına. Çünkü bütün Ermenilerin mallarının üstüne oturdular o zaman. Fabrikalara oturdular, paralara oturdular, evlerin üstüne oturdular.
The recognition is the main part on the political level, to recognize what happened. Because when the Armenian genocide is not recognized, when it's not recognized that it happened historically, it hurts us as a nation, because they totally deny our nation, they totally deny our history. And we see the repetition of the same pattern even now. Yes, there is no actual martyrdom, there is no actual killing, but in a way they kill our history. They kill whatever happened back in our history. I mean, they kill the history and lives of 1 million people with their approach.
If you look at Germany and the Holocaust, Germany has been at the forefront of admitting and taking responsibility for the Holocaust and the murder of Jews and Gypsies and others. If you look at Bosnia, there has been a responsibility for that in terms of Serbs, Croats, and Bosnians. And I think that it actually moves a society for healing.
Concerning the recognition of the current government of Turkey, whether or not they recognize the Armenian genocide, I believe it's a good thing if they were to come to the point and did acknowledge that this horrific genocide took place, and it was the Ottoman government that perpetrated this mass killing of over 1,500,000 Armenians in the year of 1915 against this minority group of Armenians. I think it would be a very healthy opportunity for the Turkish government to come forward and share the truth of what transpired during that period.
It is not probably in my place to talk about what the responsibility the Turkish government has beyond the recognition. I think the recognition itself will be a big step for us as a nation and as a church to see that they are moving forward with what happened between those two nations in our history. Well, we as a nation, I think, we feel betrayed by starting from Obama, and before that, there was a recognition even before the former presidents too, and in a way, there's a betrayal because they promised to acknowledge that before becoming a president, and then you don't see that happening during the presidency. Again, because of the political reasons and because of everything that comes with their political situation, negotiation between those two countries.
In the United Nations, it is accepted as a genocide. It's only Turkey that will not, and people are hesitant to do that in terms of Armenia because of their relationship with Turkey as a whole, as a country.
Our nation, Armenians, our history is not only about the genocide. We have so many other things that we can present to the world. For instance, currently there's an exhibition in the Met Museum about Armenia. So it is another way presenting our history and our heritage. It is not only about the Armenian genocide. To be Armenian means to be a person who follows the religion that was set by the forefathers of our country. As you know, Armenia is the first nation in the world that accepted Christianity as a state religion. I think being Armenian means being follower of Christ, being follower of the Orthodox theology and the religion, being follower of the rich heritage, the culture that we have had during our history.